Thank you so much, Deborah. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor, but as well pleasure to speak to you of the new wild wine world about selection work done in the old wine world. It's a continuous process where we are involved at the time. Wine grapes come from different gene pools and different gene centers of the old wine world, of different climate zones, and the knowledge about the flexibility of the adaptation capacity of the different varieties in the moment is in study and will be the great challenge, to my opinion, for future generation to make better wine and earn more money by selling wine. Through climate change, we became aware of the importance of the right type of plant in the right climate and soil condition. In winemaking jargon language, we speak of terroir. Climate change, phenomenon nothing new. It is known in Europa in the 16th century. We already suffered a little glacier time. We now are aware of opposite trend in climate change. Change has always caused migration of botanic species and varieties, as well can seen in some forestry. I have seen this in your wonderful museum in San Francisco, where the redwood is now changing, blue oak are disappearing, and the same happening with different varieties, especially agriculture varieties like potato varieties and fruit varieties. My mission today is to speak of the origin of Vitis species and variety as a migration of grapevine varieties. We meanwhile know that the grape quality varieties have a different capacity to adapt to terroir condition. Some varieties are flexible to the terroir, like for example Chardonnay and even Cabernet Sauvignon. We plant it in Germany, but you can plant it here in Southern California as well. While others are quite intolerant of terroir change, like Riesling, Pinot Noir, and Gamay. Of course, you can produce wine with them, but the quality always will be different. First of all, I will speak about the historic process of natural diversification of the Vitis family. In the prehistoric late Cretaceous period, about 65 million of years ago, when the American continent drifted away, opening the Atlantic as an unbridgeable separation of the continents. There are fossils of leaves proving the existence of genera Vitis at this time. We found it in Portugal, but you find them very similar here as well. You can see here two examples on the scale. The family Vitis, meanwhile, diversified into 50 different families of Vitis spread all over the northern hemisphere. It's interesting to know it's just on the northern, never on the southern hemisphere available. It is very interesting, in spite of having so many different Vitis species, that only one, and this was in the European here more or less is beginning the Asian part. In the Asian European shelf we found Vitis sylvestris. Vitis sylvestris is a wide form of variety which is diotic. This means you have female and male plants, small berry and quite acid. In the southern part more red color, in the northern part more white color, and they were the basis of selection of grapevine in the historic time. The Vitis sylvestris, here is a photography you found still everywhere in Europe, but it suffered very much by human influence and the migration of American grapevines, which has been which has bringing the phylloxera and some powdery diseases we did not support in our country to Europe and destroyed them. Nowadays, and this is very interesting, we have in Portugal and in Spain a lot of Vitis sylvestris areas. In spite of the big problems they do have, this mean they, in the moment, they are not just controlled by water, on the water side, by water, the phylloxera can kill them, and much worse still is the influence of the human persons who are destroying them because they think they are infested, and so we lose them by time. But the important thing of this scale is that in whole Europe has been selected, not only Europe, in whole Europe, Asian shelf has been selected these varieties, and it happened 6,000 years before Jesus Christ in Transcaucasia, with natural Vitis sylvestris surviving the glacial period, protected by the mountains of the Caucasian. And we had the beginning of the grapevine work with original clones. The second phases then came about 3,000-4,000 years later, 2000 BC, when in Europe we started to select as well. So we know that in Etruscan were selecting this Italian variety, and it's very interesting to see that Portugal is well protected here by the Iberian mountains, which are exactly on the same latitude like the Caucasian. Nobody knows that. Maybe it's the only gene pool what's remaining the glaciarian era. We have had no problem with in this time. We know that continuously in our areas, in different zones, we had our varieties, and we selected. Only the Iberian had a different development than the other European countries. You may not know, but in the 6th, 7th century, the Saracen came to us, and the Saracen are Muslim, and they didn't really promote the wine production in this time, and so we 400-500 years later ended in the process. The Iberian gene pool, therefore, is very important, and I think the most varieties are autochthonous. Of course, we had since 2,000, 3,000 years before Christ the first migration by the Thalassian, then by the Greece and the Phoenician, who brought the variety. For example, the Muscat of Alexandria came there, and they crossed with regional varieties as well. But this is interesting that our gene pool, as I told, is different to France and different to Germany, because in Germany we had the glaciarian area, in France we had the glaciarian area, and for sure they did not survive one only Vitis vinifera in the glaciarian area. They migrated later back by birds or by human migration. We found in Portugal, and the same happened in Spain, on the bottom of fountains, or even in old recipients, destroyed recipients, we found tartaric residual, so that we can calculate that about 2,000 years before the grapevine selection came. And you can see on the different form of the grapes there are some Vitis sylvestris, the smaller one, and some Vitis sativa or even Vitis vinifera, which are our varieties from today. The idea of the gene pool is a very old idea. More 150 years ago, it was Negrul, a Russian scientific, who started to identify at first the Vitis sylvestre area and differentiate them from the other families. Then he found out that the Vitis orientalis, the area we spoke about in Transcaucasia down to Egypt, was the beginning of the grapevine production, and he called this the gene pool of Vitis vinifera orientalis. And then we had a second gene pool when this variety migrated over Greece to the north until to the Black Sea. This is the gene pool of Pontica, and then the last one was Vitis vinifera occidentalis, and this is subdivided in these secondary gene pools in France and Germany, and the original gene pool which was in Iberia. Now I come to another completely different thema, to another situation, the migration. Since human being existed and the wine existed, they migrated. And when they migrated, they took some varieties with them. And of course, the German did not look for the climate where they immigrated, neither the French or the Spanish. They may have come to a northern area, they took the variety with them, and so it happened that many variety came out of the climate area where they originally has been. If you look here in this map, it's very interesting climate region, you have here this reddish color for the southern European and the blue one where the German and French varieties are. And then if you look here on this map, you find that California here has exactly the same color. You find this here in Chile, you find it here on the Cape, and not on all African area, find it in Barossa Valley and other areas of Australia. It's very interesting that this variety could migrate of the southern area, and they have found their same climatically condition in these areas as well. Another point of view is that we in Europe, this is a map of Europe, this is a half island from Iberia, this is Italy, here is Greece, this is France, and this is Germany. We have three different climatical areas. We have here the moderate fresh, the temperate variety, and the Mediterranean climate, and here in the south is the arid climate. We introduced now, you have seen just the west coast of America, and it's very interesting that, for example, varieties like Traminer, Riesling and so forth do very well in the area of Washington. That's a variety of France like Pinot Noir and so on, do very well in Portland, in Oregon. And what are you doing here in California? You use Riesling and you use Cabernet from other areas. It's very interesting that by this human migration in your area are not the adapted variety of the same climate zone, or very few of them. So now we will speak about the Iberian gene pool. I combined with my colleague who will speak after me that I gave this introduction and will give a general view of the different variety we have in Iberia, and then I will speak about the Portuguese variety in detail, and he will speak about the Spanish variety. And he will add as well the clonal selections. It does not mean that we did not work on clonal selection, but by not repeating, so only he will take care of this sector. Okay, we have about 500 different varieties in Iberia, which are known. I think there are much more, but these are documented and they are in collection. Very interesting, the most of them we don't really know. We have them, we did not work consequently on them. They are in vineyards mixed with other varieties or even forgotten, and there's an enormous genetic reserve for future investigation in Europe. In my book I wrote about 80 varieties in Portugal, and Portugal knows more than 300, so for giving an example. By the collaboration with my friends from Spain, we tried now to classify those variety and to find which variety can be of interest for a certain purpose and to differentiate them according to different criteria they have. So we have the three groups where we speak about, and we didn't have the time and not the place to speak about more than about 50 variety we will speak today. We have the Iberian elite variety. We define the elite variety as varieties which are very high class but are flexible to plant it in different varieties. So as I spoke about the Chardonnay or about the Cabernet, you can plant in Germany and you can plant some 1,000 kilometers more in the south, and they give result. Then we have a second group, which are the Iberian regional variety. We have fantastic varieties in Iberia which bring great wines, but only in a special site. If we change them to other terroir condition, it may be by climate or by soil changes, we can't succeed to make good qualities. So I think it is very important to separate these two groups because the second group you can use here in America as well, but you must test it before. It is not possible just to start with this variety because you have seen in Europe they produce good quality. And the third variety group is a quite interesting situation. Iberia had a lot of special wines. Historically, we have very differentiated types of wine. So we have, for example, in Portugal, what we call green wine, what is a light wine, who originally was produced with 7 or 8 degree of alcohol. Only by the European legislation is now forbidden. I think it's ridiculous, but it's forbidden to call it wine when it's less than, I think, 9 degree of alcohol. But we continue to use green wine now. They are a little bit upgraded in alcohol. Then we have the cava wines. Cava wines is a wonderful alternativity to the champagne. I personally prefer cava, I confess, in spite I'm not living in Spain, I'm living in Portugal. These are sparkling wines which are in a certain area under certain condition bringing wonderful varieties. So we have in the Douro Valley the famous port wine, which is considered to be one of the best wine of the world. We have in sherry, in Xeres de la Frontera in the south, the sherry wine. And so we have a lot of different wines, and they has their specific variety. We can use them, of course, for table wine as well, but this is not the final purpose. Now I present you the first category where we did speak about, the category of the Iberian elite varieties. We have 3 varieties in common. I will not discuss where the origin is or not, we do not know it, means besides Aragonez. In Aragonez or Temperanillo, everybody knows they are really coming from Spain. There's no question, the variability in this area is the biggest. Albarino is a variety which is very important in Portugal and in Spain, and is one of the most increasing variety. It is a variety that was really discovered only 50 years ago, or less than that. The Spanish has been much more dynamic. They already planted 5,000 hectares. We only have 2,000 hectares, but we must consider that they as well have 5 times more population and more wine area than we do have. Albarino, I think, is a very flexible variety. I was the first to plant them in Alentejo, and we had wonderful wine. I know from our friend Nick Dukuslian, he's making wine here. Albarino is, to my opinion, one of the future white wine for hot climate condition. We have the Godello or Gouveia, as we call it. In former time it was called Verdelho. So Verdelho is the old Verdelho from Portugal continent, always has been Gouveia. We don't have the Madeiran Verdelho, or we didn't have it in the continent. It's a big error, but the denomination was formed like that. The Gouveia is a very important increasing variety, especially in Portugal. It will be in 10 years, I'm sure, the number 1 or number 2 variety of the white wine. And Aragonez, I don't need to show it. I think it is now already the second most important variety in Spain. In Portugal as well, it becomes the most important red variety. Then we come to the national varieties. We think that Touriga Nacional, to my opinion, the best Iberian red wine variety, but my private variety, is extremely increasing. If I say that 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we only had 5,000 hectares. Now we have 7,500. But I guarantee you, every year we are planting more than 1,000 hectares in Portugal. Trincadeira as well is a variety which is very important, the second most important variety nowadays in Portugal. And Arinto is a white wine variety which is very, very dynamic as well. Together with these both here upstairs are the most planted varieties in the moment. It is completely different what happened 20 years ago, as well in Spain, as well in Portugal. By our systematic scientific work, we found better varieties than there has been planted. But not this is the only region. We only started 20 years ago to work with controlled fermentation, with cold fermentation on white varieties and so on. In Spain, it is Garnacha, Monastrell, Verdejo. I will not speak about Albarino, Aragonez, Garnacha, Monastrell. This will be done in the next group by Jesus Schuster Bombin. The second group is Iberian regional varieties for quality wine. We have a lot of regional varieties and some really great wine which already win already world competition as best wine of the world and things like that, but they do not bring the same result for 50 kilometers beside or 100 kilometers beside. So we have these common varieties, Garnacha, Tintoreiro, Alicante Boucher in Portugal is more important, is very important in Portugal and very important in Spain, basically for blends because of the color. Tinta Miuda or Graciano is a very much increasing variety. Jaén, not so much increasing. Mencia is a very aromatic variety under certain condition, excellent wine. The same is with Ruffet, which is very complicated, but in certain condition is bringing good wine. We have then in Portugal Alfrocheiro, Anton Vaz, Castelão, Engrosado, Fernão Pires, Malvasia Fina, Rabigato, I can't even read what is the next one, Syria, Tinta Barocca, Tinto Cao, and Viosinho. These varieties you see on the volume, there are some very important, like for example Fernão Pires, but there are, as I say, special varieties. I will not speak about the Spanish because I think this will be done by the following speaker. Now I just give a short view for the special wine variety, and we have, for example, the Palomina for the sherry wine. We have the Tranchadura for the light wine. We have the Loureiro, a very interesting white wine variety. We made first experiment now in Alentejo as well, which is a climate very central, similar to Central Valley, and we found that Loureiro is flexible. Espadeiro, Tinta Francisca for the port wine, Pastato for the port wine, Boraçal for the green wine. Vinhão is a Tintoreiro variety, is called as well, and I have seen you have it in your collections, the Suzão. He has even Tintoreiro condition. Cercial is a fantastic variety which is used in Madeira for making the Cercial wine from Madeira. It's a white wine, even in condition of terroir we have here in Central Valley. It has 8-9 per mil of acidity. This is unique. And then we have the Godello, which is a good variety for sweet wines, for dessert wines, and for sparkling wines. This is a variety which is not coming from the continent. I told you already, it's coming from Madeira Island, and I think was selected in 14th century by Henrik the Navigator when in 450 the Constantinopolis was occupied by the Turkish. The Portuguese went there and took the varieties away and brought them to their island, to Madeira, and to they thought on the climate, the very similar climate, and to make sweet wines. In the Spanish side, I think my colleague will speak about these varieties later. Now I would like to speak a little bit about my varieties, Portuguese varieties. So you see here, these are the varieties where I intend to speak in the next minutes. Many important Iberian varieties, as I told, are on both countries. The national varieties will be presented by each speaker of the group, and I think I start now to explain you how I will present my varieties. You see here a map of Portugal. This is for example, it's a Douro Valley, it's a port wine Douro Valley, this is a green wine, this is Tau area, this is Ribatejo, this is Alentejo, and this is Algarve. And you see here the distribution of map of the varieties. Our governmental organization, IBERIAN, made this plan some years ago, so we know. Touriga Nacional, I consider to be extremely important variety. The problem of Touriga Nacional is nobody knows it, and you can't sell it as a brand wine, but you will see that the extremely high volume of aromatic compounds, terpenic compounds, will make this for one of the best wine of blends. The origin of this variety is the north of Portugal, in the Douro and Douro Valley. First time it was mentioned in 1790 by Lobo in Fonseca. The autochthonous variety has a medium to high intervariability. The classification is now spread all over the country. You see, when I came to Portugal, this was 30 years ago, there was no plant. It was just planted here in this area. This is the most expanding variety in the moment. There are existing a lot of clones, and I think we have 3 clones here registered, and we have a partner to multiply them here. The vegetative potential is high vigor, plagiotropic shoots, high index of fertility, medium-high production, need of humid soil, light ripening with high heliothermic need. This means ideal for you. You need more than 1,600 hours according to Index Winkler, or about 10 degrees in the month, in the period. The next variety on the left side is the Touriga Franca. The origin of this variety as well is coming from the north. It seems to be crossbreeding with another variety, spontaneous crossbreeding, natural crossbreeding, which is not so old. We only know this variety since a little bit more than 100 years. The variety at the moment is very expensive, very good. Some people even think it is still better than the Touriga Nacional, especially the winemakers. You can say can control certain situation well with them. There is only one clone existing. This is a clone I selected, and I think FBS found there some virus we did not find, and this is just in I think in the sanitation process. It will be released next year. The vegetative conditions of this variety are nearly the same like Touriga, very vigorous, but better erected shoot. You don't have this plagiotropic shoot that Touriga has. It's easier therefore to cultivate and has a medium-high fertility but a high production and a medium late ripening with a little bit lower heliothermic demand than the Touriga Nacional. Now about the wines, if you see the profile, we have your, I think you found this system to present with an aromatic wheel of both varieties. The Touriga wine, the aroma is supple, round and hot. Remind on wild dark red, nearly black fruit, very ripe, hint and fruit dominated by violet, showing an excellent sweet perfume in good years, resinous, similar to broom. The Touriga Nacional is not the same aroma. The aroma is intensive in good years with some floral evidence like roses and rock roses, well balanced with accentuated long remaining tannic fruity finish. Under specific terroir condition, the wine may turn to very high quality. But it is, I must say that it is not like the first one, not a flexible variety. You need the terroir condition to know. We come now to the next group of plants. I will not speak about the Aragonez. Of course, Aragonez has different clone than the Spaniards have with her Temperanillo, and there are some clones of us available, but I will not speak about the variety. I think the Spaniards are much better capable to speak about that. Then we come to a very old and very important variety on the right side of our wines, which is the Trincadeira, or Trincadeira Preta, as it has been called before. The origin is the central and south of Portugal, first time mentioned by Alata in 1711, medium-low variability and autochthonous variety. I never heard in Spain that this variety exists. There are existing a lot of clones and some are released. The classification of this variety is nearly in the whole country. As you see, it's one of the most distributed variety besides Aragonez, but it's much older though. We have different name here. Is Tinta Amarela, here is Trincadeira, and there are some other names as well, but it doesn't bring anything to call them all. Morphologically, the variety is medium-sized, pentagonal, slightly undulated leaves. You recognize the variety quite easy. 5 lobes, overlapping sinus in the V form. The vegetative potential is very high, half-erected, some plagiotropic lateral shoots, medium fertility index, high productivity, sensitive skin of grape. This is a problem, very sensitive for oidium, for powdery mildew, and medium ripening with high heliothermic demand. You only can plant them in a very hot area, but this can bring very interesting wine. I do not know, I think you have the wine, this is the second one, the third wine you have here. This is Trincadeira. To the wine, the Temperanillo will be explained later. The wines have an intensive garnet red color. The prevailing aroma is herby with some pepper. On aging gains some complexity and finesse on stewed fruit. The taste is balanced with accentuated tannin and has a permanent aroma like finished. The secret of this variety is this variety blended with a very ripe Alicante Boucher, bring maybe the best Portuguese wine of all we have. Now we have 2 white variety, the Alvarinho, as I already told, they're coming here just from the north, but you will not believe this map was done 6 years ago, would be completely different now. All this area is full of Alvarinho now, and the same is happening in Spain. Arinto, the Arinto variety is a very old variety. It is here in Vinho Verde. It's called Pedernão. Here's Pedernà. Here is Arinto. And this variety is maybe one of the most interesting variety we have. The origin, as I told, is just all over the country. It was already in 1712 described by Alarte as an excellent quality wine. Medium-high intervarietal variation. It should be much higher, I think, but it is not so high. Autochthonous variety. There are 10 clones existing at all, and 1 clone in the moment is available in California. The classification is basically recognized for all areas, high flexibility to adapt to terroir. It is of the first category, elite variety, as I told, and has it's very interesting. It doesn't exist in foreign country. Nobody found that. And the vegetative potential is as well quite positive. It's very vigorous, erected with some plagiotropic shoots, very low fertility index, but high productivity, medium late ripening time with medium heliothermic demand according to Hinkler. A very interesting variety. The wine is it's very interesting. In 1889, in the Paris World Fair, met Professor Villamayor, from Portugal, his French colleague Puya, and the wine tasting. And when Puya was tasting this wine, said, "Good Lord, this is our wine. I know it is coming from Alsace. It's the same variety because it has this kerosene tone when aging and so on, and has this high acidity, and he thought it would be Riesling. This is, I think, Arinto is a Riesling for warm area condition, for warm area climate. The wine, the appearance of the wine is open with citrus color. The aroma contains citrus and mineralic compounds, sometimes very pronounced. On aging, it gains honey-like flower with some kerosene-like notes. The taste has acid components of several fruit and is convincing in its excellent complexity. Gouveia, or Godello in Spain, or historically Godello, is a variety you found in many areas of Portugal. I selected it in the Douro Valley, and so on, but nowadays it is spread over the country. I think this is the most expanding white variety in the moment we have, besides Arinto in Portugal. And The Gouveia is a very old variety. It was already mentioned in 1531 by Fernandez in his famous book, and basically existing in the interior region of Alentejo, northern Portugal. Here in this area. On the coast side, it is, I don't know why, but we don't find this variety so often. There are existing various clones in Portugal only by my selection. The other didn't succeed. And there's one clone available at the moment here in California. The classification, it is recognized practically in all regions now, has a very high flexibility to adapt. The wine type is a little bit changing maybe, but it springs like Chardonnay, always a very interesting wine. The morphology is medium-sized, orbicular, fine lobe leaves. It's not so easy to recognize now, but a very interesting variety because the leaves are very similar. Some forms, the polymorphic presentation, but some forms of the leaves are similar to the Touriga Nacional. The vegetative potential, the medium vigor, low fertility index, and medium productivity. It is not this productivity as you in California like with 30 or 40 ton by hectare. This we cannot produce, but you can produce more than 10, 15 tons if you are a good viticulturer. And it has a medium heliothermic demand of 15,000 hours. The Phenom Pires is a very interesting variety. It's, as you see, the most important white variety in Portugal, especially on the seaside where the weather effect of the Atlantic is stronger, and this variety can even bring in certain terroir absolutely top quality in Bairrada, for example, and so on, and they can produce enormous. This variety easily can produce 30, 40 ton when you have a good trellising. The variety was in the late 18th century until to 19th century extremely popular. Taken from emigrants to New World. You find it, I think, in Australia, and even in America you had some, but not so productive clones. The medium intervariability and typically Portuguese autochthonous variety. We did not import any clone here, but you have, I think, by the FPS has clones. The classification is over whole Portugal, basically it's the central and south area. The vegetative potential is positive, but very vigorous, and the enological potential I will show you now. The Godello, for the enological potential, I can tell you is really an absolutely top variety. The quality is very well balanced with acid and alcohol. It is typically for hot climate wine, but it has fruit a little bit with an exotic aroma structure, like exotic fruits and so on. The wine, the appearance is citrus colors. The aroma contains citrus and other fruity components in warm climate condition with tendency towards exotic fruit like bananas and mangoes. The wine develops well in the bottle, remaining his fresh yellow color. Phenom Pires, the winemakers considered Phenom Pires very controversial. In moderate temperate climate and terroir with deep soils like pot soils or even alluvium, the wine has aromatic compounds reminiscent on sweet citrus fruit and flowers like mimosa, lilac and laurel with fine personality. In extreme dry hot climates, the wine have low acidity with a heavy aroma and they are very short-lived. Now I come to two varieties which are very regional varieties as well. Alfrocheira can be an excellent wine, and as well can be in other conditions not so good. Alfrocheiro is basically in central Portugal, comes from the area from Dow. It was for the first mentioned in the phylloxera pandemic in the Dow region. We do not really know where it comes from. Very interesting. If you look at the leaf, it looks like a Pinot Noir. It's very difficult to differentiate, but it's much lighter ripening and had nothing to do with the Pinot family. There is no clone in the moment we have here. The classification is all over the country, and the vegetative potential is quite well as well, but it needs a lot of heat, otherwise it doesn't come to quality. The Castellan is a wine which is very, very terroir linked. The wines have red garnet color and fruit aroma, blackcurrant and wild fruit. On aging it turns to fruit preserves and sometimes to game. The smooth taste is in balance with its acidity, still improving by age. It's very interesting. This wine gains a few times ago a world competition as being its best wine. I can't say why this happened, but it is true. In certain conditions, this wine is fantastic. Especially we have it in Setúbal in Portugal, where the great varieties, wines from Castellan were made. The wine called before, maybe you have heard, Periquita. So we come now to the end. One of my favorite white wine variety is a Viosinho. I found this variety in about 25 years ago in the north, where it's quite well populated, and it was absolutely unknown. In the south, you see, we start now to plant it here. I'm sure Viosinho will become one of the great varieties. It's had a good flexibility, in spite it is considered still a regional variety. It's very fruity. And another variety which is very interesting is the Loureiro. Loureiro is coming from the green wine area. You see here the Atlantic shore. The green wine is the basic wine for green wine today. As well in Spain, it's starting to get certain importance. Loureiro is an aromatic variety. It's very interesting for experiment situation, but I must clearly say the experience in hot climate is not enough tested. We started this year to test them in Alentejo with very good success. Short explanation to the variety, to the aroma. The Viosinho, the wine has citrus color. The aroma contains note of chamomile, yellow plums and other fresh fruits, building a fruity bouquet. It's really very fruity. Produced in the right terroir, the taste is well balanced by fruity acidity and a persistent aromatic structure. The Loureiro wine is clear and pale in the color. The aroma is determined by laurel, lime blossom, orange, peaches, or even golden apples. The light wine has a lasting taste, dominated by a fresh, fruity acidity. As I told you, it is a light wine. So we are coming now to the end of my presentation. Of course, we could explain much more. I'm sorry I can't send you my book. It is not available in English. We didn't find a distributor to finance the translation. So we will try now to make a little booklet in collaboration with FPS to give you more informants about our Portuguese wine, and I hope together with the Spaniard, so that you in future have a better basic in your own language. I finally want now to thank for the chance to speak to you here, and on the first place, of course, I have to thank to Deborah, who since many years, when we met for the first time in the ICVG, accompanied my work, and I must confess is a very flexible partner to import varieties under one condition, and this I agree 100%, sanitary clean. Don't import varieties which are not controlled and bring problems by sanitary side. Thank you very much, Deborah. On the second place, I have to thank to Nick Dukuslian. He is a fantastic dynamizer, a machine who is moving everything and helping when necessary to do to make the impossible possible, and there doesn't exist any mission impossible for him. He is really fantastic, and what I have seen in this day, what happened already in Spain, in California, all varieties I can imagine are planted in different sites, and we have a great future together in collaboration, I hope, on favor of the quality wine of this area. And finally, I have to thank to my friends from Sunridge for starting so quickly with the pre-multiplication of our material to make it available for the agriculture of California. Thank you very much.
We do have plenty of times for questions, and it's rare for us to have such an authority on Portuguese wine grapes with us. So I'd be glad to entertain some questions if anybody has some. Here we go. The question was, what's the rot potential for Arinto? Fungal rot? For the cluster rot for Arinto?
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. How the cluster is formed?
Bunch rot. No, do they get fungus?
Okay, there are no variety who doesn't get. We didn't succeed to make resistant variety. We are working on that, but you know the transgene way at the moment is not very well seen in European community. Now it's quite tolerant, but you are right. In certain situations, when you irrigate the variety too much, you come to very high volume, and then the berries become very big, and though you can have some problems. But you can control this quite well by irrigation. You can have much smaller variety, and then you have very open cluster, and then you have no problems. Yeah. The Alfrochero variety, as you see, is very similar aesthetically to Pinot Noir. Is a regional variety which brings a very interesting aroma, especially when finished. The color is intensive garnet with violet reflexes. Aroma is fruity and intense. The taste is delicate, smooth, tanninous, and balanced with acidity. When aging, the color turns to ruby and the freshness changes into complexity. This is, it's not of me, the determination of the enologer. The variety himself is not so extremely vigorous. It's similar to Pinot in our weather condition. And if you don't have a moisty situation or you don't irrigate, the variety has problems in hot climate. But if you irrigate well, you can bring them to ripe. But as I told you, you must study them. In Alentejo, for example, we do not have such a good result on the wine as it is in Sedao. I think you need very profound soil, sandy soils, and a good irrigation to have good quality of this wine.
The question was whether you could please comment on the commonness of the use of irrigation in Portugal. And some of these varieties, are they coming from places where there's no irrigation? And what would be your comment on using them in California with irrigation? Okay,
this is a very interesting phenomenon. European community considered until, I think, 12 years ago, irrigation as a crime. And you can't go to jail if you irrigate. This has historic reason and is difficult to explain. It changed now by the enormous volume of wine from Australia coming to us, where we understood that it's all irrigated, so we opened our heart as well for irrigation. And that is the reason you must understand that basically the philosophy in Europe is still thinking how does this wine work without irrigation. We have now, the second problem is that a big part of the wines, especially in Dow area, more than 60% are over 40 years old. Of course, they don't have irrigation. And though you have completely different situation, you cannot transfer it. I think you must do it like Nick de Koosland is doing. You must test it. You must go to different sites. You must plant them and must experiment. It is no question. It is not an elite variety with high flexibility. It is a regional variety where you have to find the real location to plant it. And, of course, irrigate.
Jim, you had one too?
You mentioned that you have a number of varieties that are more obscure I wondered if you could describe your efforts to evaluate those varieties in different locations, or what efforts are you
So are you working to evaluate some of your more obscure minor varieties?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, this is a personal problem. I'm now a little bit old to start from the beginning on. I think I did a lot. I started to separate varieties, has been absolutely unknown. I started to introduce, I think 60% of the varieties planted in the south now have been planted by me for the first time. I don't have the cash flow. You know, in Europe, you don't earn money. If you earn money, you are a criminal. This is a very bad situation. If I tell you that we are basically financing us by grape production. We have been the leading grape producer, but the costs are the same like yours. You have as well in the grape production people coming from over the frontier. The price for a plant at the moment is below $1 for a grafted plant. And so we have no more capacity to do anything. And the European Union at the moment has no more money to finance investigation. In Portugal, the investigation stations are closed. They exist, the people are there, but there's no money, they're finished. You have a big chance to go ahead in America to do concise work. We in Europe will not do anything. And I think it is a crime, I did say it very often, that we have so many varieties we never studied. I agree 100% to you. We would not live anymore if my daughter wouldn't be a winemaker, and I hope you like this wine. You drank now the red wine. She's winemaker and she's looking for sure to import as well in your area. If you can help them, I would thank you. Then we maybe can study the old varieties as well.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much, Jorgen. Thank you so much for bringing these wines for us.